Should you buy Monsterboy The Cursed Kingdom? Yes, and here are the reasons why. With me as always is Corey. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
Corey and I are both longtime professional pixel artists and game designers, and I'm actually a longtime fan of the franchise. I actually played Wonderboy the Dragon Trap on the Sega Master System when it was a new game.
I'm less familiar with the Wonderboy franchise. I, however, am familiar with the Adventure Island series on the NES, which was sort of an offshoot of the original game, which I did like quite a bit, but I'm coming into this with fresh eyes.
So the first easy topic to cover is simply production value, and I certainly have to say this game looks and sounds terrific, and that goes far beyond just the general visual quality. As a fan of the franchise, there's that additional layer of how much does this look and feel like a Monsterboy game, and it definitely does, although obviously they brought it to new levels with the resolution, the amount of on-screen color, the layers of scrolling, special effects, the smoothness of the animation is all very high quality, but also as a longtime fan, it all feels very right. It feels like the Monsterboy world. There's sort of two branches of the overall genre of Metroidvania games. There's the more gothic games like Castlevania itself, Chasm, and games like that. And then there's the more cute, cartoony side of things, which Monsterboy is a huge part of. But there's also the Shantae, Half Genie Hero, and those games by WayForward, which add a lot of things like humor and cuteness to the general genre. And they really hit the nail on the head there too. You could see the use of color is beautiful, the number of layers of scrolling. You could tell this team clearly loved the general genre in the franchise specifically that they were creating a new game for. Look how awesome this is. So I think the game that first introduced this in the series was Wonderboy 3 The Dragon Trap, where you basically became cursed and over the course of the game you were transformed into different animals. For no good reason, when you went into the weapon shop, the shop owner was a gruff-looking pig with a scarf and an eye patch. The actual playable character of the game was very forgettable and very generic, but this shop owner character, even though he was completely disposable, he had so much character visually. So this team making this game, when they needed to come up with a roster of all the different animals that you can transform into, they made the one you transform into not just be a pig, but it's the shop owner. His clothes and the eye patch, they're all exactly there. And what's especially cool, as you've probably all seen with 2D video games, usually if a character has a distinctive detail on their left or right side, when they turn around, because it's just using the same graphics but flipped horizontally, suddenly the pig character's eye patch is on the other side. So they actually had fun with that concept, and if you don't move for a while, it goes into a special comical idle animation, and you'll see him switching the eye patch from one eye to the other, which is a great inside joke from a game design element, but also it makes the character even funnier because here you have this little gruff pig character who apparently is wearing an eye patch for sheer vanity. And to play even more on this idea of vanity, when I make the character duck, he doesn't just crouch down or duck. He goes into a look how sexy I am kind of come hither pose. So that is the level of having fun and really being creative with every element of the game. You can tell that they had absolute love and passion for what they were doing.
Yeah, and not knowing anything about that character as far as the series history myself, and it is charming. The environments are breathtaking. I don't know what in this scene is like the old games and isn't. Either way, it's gorgeous.
I have been talking so much about graphics and gameplay, I have not done any justice yet to the sound. Not only is it musically beautiful, and again, if you're a fan of the franchise, all the classic songs you remember have been redone at incredible fidelity. It sounds like they got real orchestras to play the music. But on top of that, the sound effects, all of the audio engineering is so well done. And all those cute and funny little nuances that I talked about in the animations and the gameplay are so beautifully reinforced with the sound design. One of the way you get these new projectile and magic weapon summon abilities is by finding these things that they call Truffles. And only your pig character can find him with his sense of smell ability. And then you eat these things. But they made these things kind of like a mandrake root, and it makes eye contact with the pig character. It gets scared. The pig character swallows the thing whole. And in past games, we're going to have the character fart. Like, just fart equals funny. But in this case, after that eating sequence, the pig character does a kind of discreet fart that it seems a bit embarrassed of. That's the way to do it.
It ties right into his character too.
Exactly. And whoever the sound designer or sound designers were, they were not the weak link in the fence. A critical thing of Wonderboy 3, the Dragon Trap, which was obviously a big inspiration for this game, you were transformed into these different animals, which had different abilities and different weaknesses. And they did a fantastic job in this game, making each new character have really unique aspects to the gameplay, and also unlock new areas you can reach. If you're familiar with franchises like Mega Man, they tied in these different animals you could become with specific bosses. So it's after defeating a snake boss that you can then become a snake.
Yeah, I always enjoy when the powers or abilities you have directly tie into the theme of the world and the enemies you're facing and the obstacles, because I've played too many games where things feel random and they don't fit. Yeah, that sounds great.
And speaking of the gameplay of this game, it is very good and consistent all the way through, but we should talk about some of the common pitfalls of this genre in general. One of the big issues can be suddenly not knowing where you should go or what you should do. And they found an excellent balance of telling a good, cohesive story that stays interesting and entertaining with a minimal of dialogue you have to keep reading and pressing through. And there's a really nice full-screen map that you can pull up and zoom to see the areas of the world you've not gone to yet. That, oh, now I can fly, or now I can break these kind of bricks. Let me look for every part of the map. But they go a step further. They give you a green crosshair at the end of every major plot development that gives you a target that reminds you where you needed to go.
And it is a shame that this genre is called the Metroidvania genre. Before that term was coined, I always considered this the adventure platformer genre. Because there were games that broke that mold, and it's nice to see a game like this that is in that genre technically, but...
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's that other branch. You've got the more light-hearted, cartoony, they actually interject humor, which is a breath of fresh air. Less gothic, less heavy, continually trying to entertain you. It's not about necessarily just the challenge, or oh, what a cool story. It's how many times can it not only make you have fun with the gameplay, but actually make you chuckle or make you go, aww, which is really nice.
Yeah, and one of the issues with this genre from a lot of the games I've played, spending a lot of time replaying areas or grinding enemies or things like that.
They actually did a fantastic job balancing that as well. Almost any major area will introduce something new in it. So even when you do need to backtrack, now that you have a new power, there's either a new way of getting through, just crossing that area. For example, now I can really quickly swim under this water, or now I'm immune to this poison and I can go right through it. Or now I can teleport. So even when you do need to backtrack, it keeps it fresh and interesting. But also, they introduce at just the right time when you're gonna have to start traveling back and forth to places you've been, teleportation portals in all the main areas of the game. And you even get that magic wand, that big staff. That's something you get sort of halfway through the game. From that point on, lets you teleport from anywhere you are to any of those teleportation nodes. So you don't even have to walk far enough to find a teleportation node. You can immediately leave any area you're in and get to any of the other major areas of the game. And that's another aspect that they did really well, is how much do you need to grind to either get experience points or to get money for what you need. You never have to grind. You can come to points where you find a new store that has a really expensive item, but in general, that's kind of a decision you can make. Either I'm going to specifically stop progressing and grind because I want that thing right now, or you can keep playing the rest of the game and teleport right back to that store. So there's almost no forced grinding, and there's enough variety in the areas and the enemies you can kill, And they even went one farther. There's a relatively cheap magic bracelet you could buy, probably a quarter of the way through the game, and every coin you grab, it gives you double the value of the coin. And like I said, the progression of the game has been so organic. I think I grinded once, and it was a very conscious decision, like, before I do this boss fight, I want to have this item because I think this item's cool.
And it seems like a game with this level of care into the art and production and entertainment value. It's gonna make something like grinding more fun and less money.
Exactly, and there are a lot of different ways to grind. Look for enemies that have the highest chance of dropping more money, but there's areas with these blocks that you can destroy as the lion character by doing a fun dash move, and each block drops a coin. So if you buy that bracelet so it's double, it's almost like popping bubble wrap. If you viscerally enjoy shattering your way through these coins, that will be a really fun way for you to grind to get money. They make sure nothing is so ridiculously expensive it's going to force you to grind forever, and then they give you these other easy out, buy that bracelet, and then your grinding time gets cut in half. And the last big pitfall when I played through other Metroidvania games is the most dangerous pitfall. And in a Metroidvania game, the player is going to have invested many hours and theoretically emotionally invested in this plot and in this character. And the worst thing you can do is drop the ball at the end. But it would be one thing if you drop the ball early so the character could abandon the game and not waste their time. You're playing through this game, you're getting good at the game, and you're getting all these new abilities, you're becoming almost a demigod. But in this particular game, you end up in this canned situation where your super powerful demigod character magically somehow can't respond, react, or survive getting hit by a relatively small boulder. One, I have plenty of reaction time to avoid that. Two, even if it hit me, worse things have hit me multiple times in this game. I've got health potions, I've got magic armor that would not kill me, that would hardly hurt. You know what I mean? And then, so like this completely forced situation that was completely out of character that made the player suddenly magically helpless. Like you do all this work to be this badass hero, and then you're artificially forced to be this helpless thing just for some plot point narrative that the game designer really for some reason wanted to hit. And then the other way that things can go wrong, which happens a lot in this genre, is by the time the player gets to the boss fight, they've done so much grinding, they've gained so much experience points, and they have so much powerful equipment and health potions that the end boss fight is a walkthrough. You beat the end boss in 3 seconds, and you're like, no, don't tell me that's it. Like that anticlimactic.
Yeah, we faced that in some of our playthroughs too.
Exactly. What? It's over? So the good news is, in the case of this game, they did not plot thematically or break character to force a theme that the writer wanted to that was out of character and made no sense and made the character feel impotent. And they designed the end boss fight in a way that reinforces the whole aspect of the game, specific parts of the game. And there's a lot of, a good boss fight has these different patterns you have to learn. It'll be like 2 or 3 distinct moves. So not only did they do that, but they reinforced throughout the game. There's this constant reinforcement of, remember, you've got a new ability. You need to use that new ability now. And it's the same thing with, this part of the boss fight, you gotta do as this particular monster or animal. So that forces you to not just be able to rely on health potions and hack away. If you've got enough health potions in some games, you could just keep hacking away and, I'll use another health potion. No matter how powerful you've gotten, no matter how much you grind, you need to learn the patterns and you need to switch between the animals and actually do a good job gameplay-wise to get through the whole sequence and beat the boss.
Are there any aspects of the game that you feel could have been better? I mean, you talked about major things that can go wrong with the game, but there are often little things that annoy players.
No game is perfect and everyone has their tastes and pet peeves. So there were definitely moments in the game where I thought they kind of dropped mini balls, so to speak. Like, it could have been done a little better, or things got a little bit frustrating. As an example, there's at least one shmup section, and having played a lot of shmups and being halfway toward a shmups snob, one of the critical rules is making the hitbox or hit sphere of the character smaller than the actual graphics. You don't want to get hit or die because the tip of your toe or the tip of your big wing got grazed by something that even in three-dimensional space it wouldn't even make sense that they made contact. It was fine, it wasn't too hard, but I could tell the people making this game weren't massive shmup fans. There's little things like that. Like there was one boss fight in particular where one thing we've talked about in some of our other videos, especially our playthrough of Black Belt for the Sega Master System, was visual communication. These are video games after all, and it's always really important to always give the player good visual feedback when they did something good that does damage to an enemy, and then to really let them know when an attack had no effect or very little or reduced effect. It could be more excusable back in the old days because they had very little memory. They can't have robust animations and visual effects letting you know, yeah, that was a really good hit, and letting you know, oh yeah, the character dodged it or did a block or something. And don't get me wrong, it's not that they didn't do it, I just wish they had done it a little more. About halfway through the game, you start getting shields that can repel physical or energy attacks back at the enemy. And they make a whole point of forcing you through an area where over and over again, there's going to be a million opportunities where these enemies spit this green thing at you. Even accidentally, you're going to bounce it back at some point. They're trying to burn it into your memory. If you see a green projectile, reflect it back at the enemy and it will stun the enemy. But the problem is, when you're fighting a boss, and your attacks were working on them before, and suddenly they're in a certain situation, but you can still jump up, and clearly you're swinging your sword, and it's going right through the lower half of their body for no good reason. That annoyed me. I think it took me longer to figure out. And again, this game has comedy, so they could have done a hilarious thing where if you do jump up and try to swing, he like pulls his legs up in a funny way. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, I see what you mean. At no point ever in any game should you clearly do a thing that's normal in the game to
Exactly.
or hit an
And it
enemy
has no
collide
effect.
with something, and it does absolutely nothing with no
Right.
feedback. It's pretty minor still.
Yeah,
Like once
exactly.
the player learns it, they'll know. But
Right. Visual feedback. You don't want to frustrate the player for the wrong reasons. If something doesn't work, it should be obvious in the first place it's not going to work, or once you try it and it doesn't work, let them know why it's not working. They literally could have made it like 16 pixels higher, and it would have been clearly out of reach. So in their frame of mind, and this was a theme throughout the whole game, in a sense you could say I should have known better. You get new abilities, you're trained to use them, and then you need to use them in certain parts of levels or certain boss fights. And like I said, they were very careful to try to drill it in my head. The problem was they didn't also make sure if you do this thing they don't want you to do, that they make it visually make sense that it's not having effect. It can only be so perfect. It's remarkable. This game has a lot of depth, a lot of boss fights, a lot of sections, and the fact that it only was frustrating once in one boss fight for maybe 30 seconds until I figured it out, that's a testament to the quality of this game. I don't think there's ever been a game that didn't frustrate me on more occasions than this game. A game like this, they go for production value and how many hours that it's going to take you to get through the game, and of course how entertaining it is that time you play through. But the big problem with this genre is, even this one, which literally I think is my favorite game of the entire genre, at most I can only imagine myself playing through this game once every few years. A huge chunk of this game is the surprise factor, is figuring out how to do these puzzles, being exposed to the characters and the plot twists and the boss fights. Once you're really familiar with it, and the game takes 30 hours instead of 30 minutes to get through, how many times are you going to replay the game? So it's about that one-shot value is kind of how you need to do your math as to whether or not you want to buy the game. But the good news about this game is they definitely gave you enough value. Even if you were only going to play this game once through ever, you're still going to get your money's worth.
my biggest thing is, in a longer game, the question is, can you play it in shorter spurts and still enjoy it over a longer period of time?
Every time you get a relevant item that increases your inventory, increases your health bar, it auto-saves, even getting money. So even if you die before reaching a save state, you're going to keep those coins when the game restarts you wherever you did last save. And there's save states all over the place. It's not like some of the early Metroidvania games where sometimes you're getting lower and lower on health points in a new area and you're like, where the hell is this save? And like I said, there's not only checkpoints all over, there's two kinds. There's general ones that only save your position and all of your stats and all of your items. And then there's the bigger ones that also fully replenish your health at the same time. And even those are quite generously spread around the world. You can teleport yourself back to anywhere that does have that full checkpoint that gives you back your health. And then you can teleport right back to where you were. So they really do a fantastic job finding that balance. The overall game difficulty is very old school. It is not a modern casual game that's too easy, but it's also never frustratingly hard. Every boss fight I did, I think it only took me at worst 3 or 4 tries. It's like, oh, I think I got the pattern now, and then you play a couple more times and you beat it. So I guess the last big topic to answer that question, should you buy the game, is not just about the value it has, but the value it has versus the price. And that was the only negative feedback I ever saw about this game, really, was that the price point, I think it retails for somewhere in the area of $30. And that is true, there are other new or existing Metroidvania style games out there that are at a lower retail price point, but the actual fun factor, playability, just the love that is very obvious that they put into making this game, it still very much might be worth buying it at the full price. But the good news is it's on Steam among other platforms, and it is many times a year very generously discounted. If you have a Steam account, it's actually on sale until December 18th for 60% off. And at that price, I could say it's practically a no-brainer. If you ever liked any Metroidvania game, this game is certainly a steal at that heavy a discount.
I agree that $30, comparatively speaking, can seem high to people. But
Yeah.
I agree with you, based on the production quality, to spend a little extra on something that I think deserves to be appreciated in that way. But yeah, on sale, I'm probably going to get it for sure. It looks like this series finally got its pinnacle, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to thematically end this video, and my sales pitch for it is they didn't just take what was already there and make it high res and stuff like that. They clearly had a love for the entire franchise and created new things and new gameplay elements, and they hit every nail on the head. This looks and feels and plays and sounds exactly how a Monsterboy game should be at its pinnacle without technical constraints and with a really high-skilled team working on it. Even if you've never played a Monsterboy game before, this one does not rely on nostalgia to give you the quality you need to just become a fan and enjoy the game. But for those of us who are fans, they do the nostalgia so well. They give fan service. There's little Easter eggs, there's direct references to all the other past games in a really beautiful way, even referencing back to the original game, which became Adventure Island. They even worked homage of that game and that character into this game in such a way that it even moved me emotionally a little bit. It goes to show you how artistically they made this game. This is not just a high production value game. This is a work of art.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.